Hey everybody, and welcome to Autumn Leigh at Home. I'm Autumn Leigh. Today I'm going to show you how I take a normal bread recipe and turn it into personal bread bowls using only a Dutch oven. The recipe starts last night. It is the simplest recipe ever. I will take you back to last night and show you where we mix the ingredients and let them sit overnight. There are only 4 ingredients in this recipe, starting off with 1.5 cups of warm water, 3 1/4 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and half a teaspoon of yeast. You can see here that I actually doubled this recipe. So I put those ingredients in each bowl, and you can choose whichever flour you feel you have or you feel is best. If you have all-purpose flour, that works just fine. I made it both ways with that and bread flour, and both taste fantastic. I like the bread flour because it has a lot more rise to it, and it's made specifically for bread. So I enjoy using it, but if you don't have that and you just have all-purpose flour, that is fine too. Once you have all 4 ingredients in the bowl, go ahead and mix it. I am using a Dutch whisk to mix it. However, you don't have to have that. You can just use a wooden spoon. What you're looking for is a shaggy dough. A shaggy dough means that not all of the ingredients are fully incorporated. Place a clean dish towel over the bowl of dough and then put it in a warm place. My stove is the warmest place in my home, so I like to put it there so that it allows it and helps it to rise. I let mine rise anywhere from 8 to 24 hours. So this recipe is from Acre Homestead. It's her easy loaf bread recipe. I will post it in the description down below, but feel free to follow her video as well and watch it so you just know how to make the normal loaf of bread. Today it's the same thing, except we are doubling the recipe and turning it into 8 bread bowls. To get started, all I'm going to do is preheat the oven to 450 degrees. And then while that is preheating, I want to go ahead and put my Dutch oven in the oven so that it can preheat and warm up together for at least 30 minutes. While the Dutch oven and the oven are preheating and warming up together, we're going to go ahead and start rolling out and cutting and shaping our bread bowls. This recipe makes 4. Each recipe makes 4 bread bowls. However, these are pretty small bread bowls. If you feel that these are too small for your family and you like bigger ones, do it to whatever works for you. If you want a massive bread bowl, do 1 recipe per bowl and it will just make you a large loaf. That personally is just way too big. I have made them into thirds. I took each recipe and made them into 3 bread bowls. And to be honest, I think I prefer that over the 4 loaves of bread and the mini bread bowls. But for my family and for my kids, the 4 was perfect. So I think for kid size, the splitting it into 4 is ideal. And then for adults, maybe 3. Pinching the sides up, I'm pinching, pulling up, and then pinching at the center. So you just want to kind of pull, rotate, and pinch at the same time until you start feeling it become kind of firmer. And then you want to pinch all at the center, and it can be kind of sticky, so if you need to add a little more flour, that's fine. And then I usually kind of give it a nice little roll where I push it and pull it towards me, and it helps it roll into a ball. Another way you can do it if you're afraid of making your bread too dense by adding more flour, you can add a little bit of water to your hands and it will help it not stick. By doing the stretch and folds and pulling it up and pinching it at the center, you're actually organizing the gluten to allow for a fluffy loaf of bread. Many bread recipes require for you to knead the bread, which is also a way to organize the gluten. This recipe, however, is very simple. There is no kneading involved unless you just want to. For us, it's just pulling up the pieces of the edges and pulling them into the center and pinching them together. And then here, I'm not kneading it, I'm just kind of organizing it into a bowl and shaping it into a ball. Our bread is all rolled out. I'm just gonna let it hang out here on the counter while our oven and Dutch oven are heating up to 450 degrees for at least 30 minutes. These are going to rise and get a little bit fluffier and bigger for about 30 minutes as well. Obviously, because they're personal bread bowls, they're not gonna be huge. They're not gonna be the size of a typical loaf of bread, but they will be the perfect size for a personal loaf of bread, making it a bread bowl and you being able to use it for chili or soup or things like that. This is the fun part of getting to score your bread or put a pretty design on the top, however you want to do it. I'm using a razor that comes with a bread baking kit. You could also just use a sharp little knife or whatever you have at the house to do this. Now that our bread is scored, we're going to go ahead and get our parchment paper and put a little bit of flour on it and get each of these onto the parchment paper. Because our Dutch oven is almost completely heated up for 30 minutes. We're getting closer to that time, so I want to just make sure that we are ready to go. If you want to go ahead and let these rise on the parchment paper, that's fine too, whichever works for you. If you have one of these, it comes in handy. You want to move kind of quickly because this is hot and you want to keep it steamy and hot, but be very careful not to burn yourself. So I always try to leave a mitt on top of the lid so I don't accidentally grab it and forget and burn my hand. All right, see how I have each one in there? You can kind of see down in there a little bit. And there's another one. And here's one as well. I don't want them completely mushed, so just kind of check to make sure they're all somewhat round. And then I'm gonna take this water right here and I'm gonna pour it on the outside of the parchment paper so it's not actually touching any bread. And then quickly put the pot lid back on. And if your parchment paper is on the outside of the lid, that is okay. It's not gonna hurt anything. And then we're gonna get this into the oven really quick. The water that we put in there helps create a soft but crispy crust on the outside by creating a lot of steam on the inside of the pot. Okay, so that is in the oven. We're gonna let that stay in the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then once 30 minutes is over, we'll take the lid off and let it cook for another 15. The only thing different that you're doing is using parchment paper in the Dutch oven to make the separate bread bowls without having to use anything else. Now, I know a lot of people use, I think, river stones, and they can get really creative using ice cubes and all of that. This has worked just fine for me. I've never had any issues, and I love being able to have our own bread bowls for when we have potato soup or tomato soup or chili. All of it is great. The first 30 minutes are over, so I went ahead and took the lid off and let it bake with the lid off for another 15 minutes at the same temperature. Once that was finished, I took it out and took the bread out of the pot so that it didn't continue cooking in the pot. Now, you don't want to cut into the bread right away. You want to let it cool all the way down to room temperature. Otherwise, the bread can feel kind of gummy if you cut it right away. If you wait until it cools down to room temperature and then cut it, then you don't have to worry about that. If you're gonna eat the bread right away, then that's not a big deal. So you can go ahead and cut it while it's warm and enjoy it while it's warm. But right now, I just want to take the time to say thank you for all of you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I hope to see you guys next time.